Welcome, folks, to The Uncommon Good with Bo Bonner and Dr. Bud Marr. Every week, diving deep into the truth of Catholic social teaching and restoring all things in Christ. The Uncommon Good, live from Iowa Catholic Radio's Mercy Live Up Studios.
The Uncommon Good is on the air. I'm Bo Bonner.
This is Dr. Bud Marr.
And we are coming to you live from various parts across the globe. Unlike other football games, we don't get canceled just because it's raining and downpouring in Des Moines. I am here in Iowa. Bo Bonner, Director of the Zeta Institute for Foundation Ethics and Leadership and Director of Mission and Ministry at Mercy College of Health Sciences. You can reach us at zetainstitute.com and mchs.edu. Bud, out there in Pittsburgh, what's the weather like? And tell the folks what you do and where they can find your work.
Oh, I'm here as the director at the National Institute for Newman Studies. If you want to go to the newmaninstitute.org, you can find more about all that we do for Newman Scholarship. It's sunny and warm. Have you started building your ark yet, Bo?
That's right. I think various parts of Iowa have seriously looked into the ark building business. I don't know how gopher wood is going per length these days, but it really has done its best impression of Seattle or London or what have you. I have never lived through a week of football that I remember. Well, let's not say two major programs, but I'll leave it up to the imaginations. But when Nebraska and Iowa State both cancel games, let alone Drake, that's kind of crazy.
So here's my plan. We both need a makeup game because I think Iowa State and Nebraska could both use like a booster towards bowl eligibility.
Right.
The problem is I don't think our bye weeks fall the same week, but I don't know. People don't like this. I say schedule it for like December 4th. I don't think either team is going to make their conference championship game. Sorry, Cyclone fans.
Right. And then that gives you another reason to come. You could, watching Nebraska at Jack Trice, or where I'm messing it up, but Jack O's Stadium up north of here. That'd be pretty cool.
That would be awesome. But Bo, I did want to tell you, we missed you last week, man.
Yeah,
I'm definitely the sidekick. I figured that out.
But see, and folks, like if you heard last week, we had John Wynn in the studio, and he runs around talking about how he's an alpha male or the lead whatever in soccer. I'm not even sure if they have positions in soccer. So I thought like he was going to take up the mantle, but evidently you guys were both very polite and, didn't want to like speak over each other. That's what I heard that self-reported from both of you.
Yeah, we were both deferring to each other. I was probably confusing listeners because I went back and forth from calling him John to calling him Dewey.
Right.
So people were probably like, is this guy confused?
They're like, oh, there's three people
on
today.
That's right.
No, that works out. Well, speaking of confusion, I walk in here and the zip whip line, which we'll talk about in a second, we have the on the monitor in front of us all the different texts that people have had for different shows. And so when you walk in and just see one that says, congratulations to John Leonetti, so proud of you, I did not know what was going on. I found out it's because they were congratulating him for completing his master's degree, but you never know with John what he's getting so I thought it might have had to do with like it's becoming fall and he got his first pumpkin spice latte or something like that.
Yeah, or there's a new book coming out, or like there's Subway has named a sandwich after him.
The Leonetti sandwich, that's right. Yeah. It goes on vacation a lot. Bam.
Oh my goodness.
That actually
awesome.
that actually plays into what we're talking about. We'll talk about John Leonetti in his vacations after the first break. It will make sense, I promise. But for today, we need to talk about The Uncommon Good, as always underwritten by Cartridge World. When you're John Leonetti and you're planning out your mini vacations or writing, the books that you're writing, you use a lot of ink, and Cartridge World is a place where John Leonetti, for instance, can go through all the drafts of the books that he's writing.
Well, Cartridge World in Windsor Heights, you always get a friendly face. They do environmental printing. They've got pickup and delivery for business customers, so a lot of great stuff there. You have their phone number, right, Bo?
No. I picked up the wrong paper. I have their address, 801 73rd Street, Windsor Heights. I'm sure the good old internetti can tell you what their...
Hold on one second. 515-564-7400.
There you go. Bud being the consummate pro. Also, as always, underwritten by Mercy College of Health Sciences, starting up a new semester this week, the fall tradition, a tradition like no other. I will steal that from whichever golfing venue that is. We had Labor Day, so you get like one more extra day before the semester starts. But on Tuesday, everything started in earnest. Just walking around campus yesterday, That first day buzz, there are so many people around. You'd get the idea that like we're a D1 campus because like everybody's there the first day and everybody's bright, shiny. I don't know if happy. There's a bit of a tinge of nervousness, but it's so great to see our new students and get to welcome them. MCHS.edu, and I think that you could probably start this week still if you wanted to, but this is the perfect time to start looking into starting in spring if that's what you think you might have in mind.
Oh, man, Bo, by way of confession, and this is not indicative of Mercy professors overall, but I'm doing 2 online courses this fall, and in one of them I swapped the wrong syllabus in. So in servant leadership, I put up bioethics.
Yeah.
And the 2 really eager beavers, it really confused them, and they sent me a frantic email so we're covering bioethics and servant leadership, but I quickly rectified the situation. I think the silver lining is that it shows how dedicated Mercy students are to catch that even before classes had started.
No, that's good. I have a second 8 weeks course. We're doing There's an accelerated program, right, where you can get done in a year, an entire nursing program in a year if you have previous BA. We're going to do servant leadership in 8 weeks, and it is going to be a wild ride. So, but mchs.edu. When we get back here in 30 seconds, we'll be talking about precisely something that Mercy College has to deal with.
Yeah.
Labor, talking about Labor Day beyond just grilling meat and having a Monday off. What does the church think about labor? So this is The Uncommon Good. Bo Bonner and Bud Marr. Stick around. We will be back after these messages. Yeah, the Eagles back, but also very nice and polite. I think that's what we've done, but we're eager to please, and so we've made it where the Eagles back, but not at ear-splitting decibel level.
Yeah, you guys kind of split the difference there. That sounded nice.
Good job, Jeb. Speaking of labor, you shouldn't get fired. We're proud of you. Another thing that Jeb helps us out with is the Zip Whip line. 515-223-1150. That's 515-223-1150. Like we said, Zip Whip Line has wonderful nuggets like congratulations to John Leonetti. So we get to find out that, he has a master's degree. You look through it real quick, and on other shows, there's even some heated debates. We're hoping that if you want to add to the discussion that you would do that too. Just do hashtag UCG for Uncommon Good. That's the Zip Whip Line. 515-223-1150, 515-223-1150. We will be back after these messages with Bo and Bud Marr. This is The Uncommon Good. Stick around.
Everyone lives their life 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. How we use that time directly affects if our life will leave a significant impact or not. Every year, Blessman International leads teams of Central Iowans on 12-day, all-inclusive experiences filled with life-changing personal interaction with the beautiful African children that we serve. Teams are forming now for 2019. Space is limited, so make a decision today to use your time to do something significant in the life of an African child. Learn more and apply for a trip today at www.blessmaninternational.org. Is it time for a new roof? Then it could be time for you to get to know Bell Construction. Bell Construction is a roofing company entering its 30th year of business. They specialize in residential re-roofs, light commercial jobs, and have the experience to meet all of your roofing needs with personal service. With Bell Construction, the owner will come to your home or place of business in person to inspect and ensure the quality of work that you deserve. They pride themselves in working with you on a personal basis and making sure you are satisfied. Bell Construction, 515-963-4494.
Support for The Uncommon Good is provided by Cartridge World. Cartridge World is an industry leader delivering high-performance printing products that help you save time, money, and print great.
Perfect for businesses, home offices, college students, or busy moms trying to find affordable printing supplies including ink, toner, paper, or printers. For business customers, pickup and delivery are available. Products are guaranteed or full replacement.
Cartridge World, your low-cost, environmentally friendly printing experts, 801 73rd Street in Windsor Heights, 515-564-7400, and online at cartridgeworld.com.
Hi, this is Chad Harris with Fidelity Bank, proud graduate of Dowling Catholic High School. I'm honored to support Dowling Catholic football. I offer a friendly, trusted alternative to big financial institutions, redefining the mortgage experience for our customers and partners. Residential, investment, or commercial real estate financing, the Chad Harris team is here to assist. 515-419-2911 or online at chadharrismortgage.com. Go Maroons! Fidelity Bank is a member of the FDIC and an equal housing lender, NMLS 527988, Chad Harris, NMLS 501594.
We're back with The Uncommon Good. Bo Bonner and Dr. Bud Marr. It's a rainy day across much of the middle of the country, while Bud gloats in Pittsburgh with sunshine.
Yeah.
But it's a good thing. By the way, it's just so you know, people are using the ZipWhip line. We have hashtag UCG, an emoji of an eagle, volume emoji of a thumbs up. So that's us responding to the people's wishes, Bud. I'm pretty proud of ourselves.
That's my burner account. You guys were actually making me deaf, and I was just sideways complaining. Yeah, there's some old lady I know, and she was saying
that's you.
The eagle's too loud.
I like that you have multiple burner accounts so that you can politely let people know what's going on.
About my own show.
About your own show. That's great.
Yeah.
So, Bud, obviously it was Labor Day on Monday. You know, I think in times past there's been ideas of associating Labor Day with parades and picnics. Most of us now just use an excuse to grill out, or if it rained as much as it did in Des Moines, sleep in. The idea about why is there Labor Day and things like this. The history, of course, in the United States is that there was basically a strike in New York City in the early part of the 20th century, a peaceful one where they went downtown and basically had a picnic with all these workers. And I think it was President Grover Cleveland decided that it was important for him to not alienate labor as a class, like there's a lot of politics going on. So he declared a national day, Labor Day, to celebrate what laborers do for the sake of building up the United States. And in many ways, this is sort of the homegrown American version of May Day on May 1st, which internationally has a lot more political upheaval involved in it, a whole other story. But you and I were talking about, it would be interesting to talk about labor, the understanding of laborers and work in the context of the Catholic understanding of all these things. But let's be honest, the reason we thought of this is because we both saw a news story about a former Cosby actor.
Yeah, so I think it was last week, Jeffrey Owens, who played
Elvin.
Yeah, his character's name was Elvin on the Cosby Show. He was caught, quote unquote, caught working at Trader Joe's, the grocery store. And what specifically happened, like if you read interviews with him, is that he's still involved in the entertainment industry, but he wanted to do something on the side to kind of like fill the gaps in between jobs.
Right.
But I don't want to throw a newspaper under the bus, but somebody published an article, was like, look at this actor working at Trader Joe's. And I think he even had like a couple spots on his shirt, and it was like, wearing a dirty shirt and, you know, working a menial job. And I thought, like, man, what's sort of the cultural context where we have like a public shaming of someone who's doing honest work?
And I think, and again, not to, I don't want to go support the paper and read it, but even just in the sort of like nastiness of the Twitter sphere, it basically came up like, look how low this guy has fallen.
Yeah.
And they like evidently found a picture, and like, you know, all of us, if you've ever worked in grocery stores, the food industry, I worked at a record store, and I know that I looked disheveled and awful sometimes. But they evidently found like the worst picture possible, posted it, and was all like, look how far this person's fallen, gainfully employed, right? And you know, I don't think we need to really push the point about what other members of the Cosby Show have currently been going through and talking about, quote unquote, how far people have fallen. And it really was a sort of a galling example of, like people's disdain for certain type of work. And, you know, part of it is this sort of natural thing where you go, I like movies and TV shows as much as the next person. But it seems crazy to think like, you know, this bum who used to do something great, pretending to be another person in front of a camera, has now fallen and bottomed out, which is helping people get food, right? And so it really was a moment to really starkly look at these things and go, man, do we really think this way about people's work? And do we really want to start saying something like working at a grocery store is, quote, lowly work?
Yeah, it's fascinating to step back and think about like what our society defines as success. And ironically, Bo, I know when you and I taught together, we would talk about the work of Matthew Crawford. And in some circles, there's actually been a push to try to recover manual labor as a really like important activity for forming virtuous persons, you know? And so like, I don't know, kind of like speaking broadly, I feel like it's fair to say that for many Americans, they feel a disconnect between their labor and their integral selves, where you work a job maybe to get by, but you feel like at the end of the day, what do you have to show for your labor except the ability to relax on the weekend? Whereas, like we try to be careful on the show not to get wax too nostalgic about the past. Like a carpenter or a blacksmith from another era, at the end of their day, they could feel good. I mean, there would be like, I see this bench, and it's the work of my hands, and I know it's going to contribute to someone else's life. And so I feel like when we get into this conversation of labor theologically, there's a lot at play. The church has said a lot, but I think each one of us can say, like, wow, our society is in a place where I don't think we have, like, a God-informed perspective on work.
Well, sorry to like go all. I feel like more and more as this show goes on, we're all like, then we saw this on Twitter. This might be showing bad for all of us, but there was a good meme, bud, where it shows like I work all day in front of the bad screen so I can go home and look at the good screen. And the idea being like people like complain about like how they have to be in front of a computer for 8 hours, and then what do they go home and do? But look at a different computer, just at different stuff, and supposedly that's the life. And, it's, of course, this sort of, like, silly, tongue-in-cheek, ironic, blah, blah, blah thing. But it's getting at something, right, is, weirdly enough, we feel alienated both from our work and our leisure. Yep. And you think about, and I'm not, like, trying to act like I do something great. What can I point to what I did over Labor Day? And I got some reading done. I kind of worked on some writing, which, I guess you would say that's sort of like my craft, as it were. I also just read a lot of dumb stuff. I did watch a lot of football. I'm completely.
Yeah.
We had an over the weekend free trial, for like one of the stations, and we
nice.
Yeah, and I watched like every football game possible because I don't have cable otherwise. So I'm not denying. Like I'm not gonna complain about that. That was pretty great. But like,
yeah.
I agree, right? Like so Labor Day, you would think like, man, you should have gone out and made memories or. This or the other, and I admit, like, when my kids look back, they're not going to be able to say, like, yeah, and I went out with Dad and, whittled something that I now possess. Like, mostly I'm hoping that they're like, remember that really great snide remark Dad said?
Yeah.
Back in '08. No, they wouldn't have been alive. Back in 15. That's my hope, and you start to go, like, wow, that might not be the best thing to think about, right? Like, what are we leaving behind for children in the future,
Well, and Bo, I know these issues are really complex, so I don't want to just like pretend like I'm just spouting out answers. And I also realize that we have listeners involved in many different fields and things like that. But I do think like kind of prescinding for or like trailing off, piggybacking. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, that's the
piggybacking
third one.
on what you were saying. Like there is a sense to me that. Like when you talk about the work of our hands, in our culture, you can get very wealthy without producing anything.
Oh, yeah.
And I know we need sometimes money loaned to us, say, to be able to live in a house. But, like, I do feel like there is, I don't know, that presents some ethical difficulties that the church, like, needs to address and has addressed in different ways. And kind of, like, silly enough, appealing to another tweet that I saw this whole, like, bitter tweet thread about the history of the game of Monopoly. Supposedly, the woman who designed it, she designed it to be a game of cooperation.
Right.
And the sort of like death knell at the end where like it's just, like brass tacks, people go bankrupt. That was actually how you lost the game. But I just began to think about that, like in our culture, like how many of our economic relationships or business relationships are defined zero-sum where my success is built on someone else failing.
Well, and the thing that we want to get here, right, twofold. Yeah. This goes back, again, to this very distinct episode that we saw play out on a national stage is there jobs that are, like, worth more than others? Mr. Owens was saying, like, basically there is no distinction between jobs. And I'm like, no, that's not true, right? There are things that we go like, yeah, you put in the time and the money and the effort to be like a brain surgeon or some sort of like, like there's obviously things where we go, few people can do that and it's amazing. And the sort of like great good that they do for people is qualitatively different, right?
We want to compensate physicians appropriately so that we have the best people cutting us open.
Yeah, and the thing is like if you want to talk about like how that works in monetary schemes, like I'm a humanities major, I'm the wrong person to ask, but I think it makes sense to say that like there are people that we laud and go, that is a job that they've sacrificed a lot, they do great good, And truly, we hold them up on some sort of pedestal. I don't think that that's wrong. What starts to be silly, and I think this is what gets to it, is, and again, not to like bash actors, right? I love movies. I think there's something very fundamentally human, right? One of the first thing humans do, it seems, is like do religion and start making plays. And I'm not being facetious, but it is crazy to start going like, this guy used to be a great hero when he acted, and of course he still is, which is part of the irony of it.
Yeah.
But then he worked at a grocery store. What a loser. And you go, really? Like, grocery stores are amazing. And I say this as someone who eats way too much. I mean, think about that, right? Like, people don't even know how to get food. I ask people this all the time. If grocery stores disappeared tomorrow, what would you do? I mean, and I know they'd say like McDonald's or whatnot, but people don't even know where food comes from. It's like this great staging house of like the world living in the Western world, and we're gonna bash a guy because on the side he works at a grocery store and Trader Joe's, by the way, too, right? Like that's not like this is me being Oklahoman because I'm all like, really, like Trader Joe's, that's the nice grocery store, right? You're mad at him for going there?
Well, and to get to your point about, people being compensated at different levels, I also understand that business owners take risks that sometimes their employees do not. Like you sort of put your own well-being out on the line to get something started. And
you can. Yes. Yeah, you can. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that's right. Even there, you have a kind of disparity between the realities involved. That being said, I don't know, Bo, do you think a lot of this traces back to the Industrial Revolution where you have sort of like mass production? And then again, what you begin to see is a growing chasm between owners and workers, and the workers in some ways are kind of deprived of any sort of skin in the game, like any buy-in with what the organization or the company is meant to be accomplishing.
Well, so, Leo the 13th starts to get at this in a lot of his magisterium, but it goes to reflecting, right? We go back to, like you're saying, a Matthew Crawford type point about when you work with your hands, when what you're done with, you have the thing that you see, you point to, you see someone using. And I guess the point is not to overstate the sort of psychological power of that. This is something that I think modern philosophy in all stripes is starting to come around to, right? And not only that, like, part of what makes us rational animals is our use of tools and how the hands and the brain interact, that you can't just be like sort of a brain in a vat and become wise. But there's also this idea, right? The word that we can't get around is alienation. You become alienated from things you do for various reasons, right? Like if your work is completely immaterial, it literally does seem like something that you leave when you leave the office. Like 5 o'clock rolls around, I clock out or whatever you do, and if your work is all immaterial, you walk away from it, right? And it can seem ephemeral and things like this. And to your point about craftsmen and artisans, like they've made a thing, and even if it's incomplete, like they know it sits in a physical place and they'll come back to it and they'll manipulate it and work on it. The thing that happens with the Industrial Revolution, right, is what used to be like something that, one person did over and over again. Now someone can be on an assembly line and make hundreds of them and feel no actual attachment to in any way, right? So if you work on a factory line making benches, you don't feel like those are your benches somehow, as it were. And the thing is like, you're right, this is where it gets kind of silly about nostalgia. If we did away with factories, there's all sorts of problems in the modern world we would recreate, and do we want to go through those? But it doesn't mean that problem still isn't there. And that's where, Labor Day, in its sort of best incantation, tries to do that, right? It tries to say, hey, laborers of the world, you are important, even if the thing that used to make your labor seem real has sort of disappeared. And I just think that that's a question that this news story brings up, right? Is that are we so alienated from all of the work we do that just because one job makes less money than another, or it doesn't have the fame attached to it, it means a guy, quote, bottomed out? That, to me, is the question.
Well, and to get on the flip side of the realities that you're talking about, like when we bring in mass production, I mean, not to get too broad here, but if you think about like how, what I'll call hyper-capitalism, not I mean, not free markets in and of themselves, but hypercapitalism, I feel like it's there to sometimes produce desire. Like, oh, I didn't know I desired that. And so when we think about things that are produced, a lot of times it's not only that we don't need them, but like they have very ephemeral quality. You know, like in our context, there's not the same value of craftsmanship. And so, like, I mean, we talk about on Iowa Catholic Radio, we're supported by local businesses. And we've tried, I think this topic's come up on the show before, but we try to say in part that, like, one of the real ways that Catholic lay faithful can witness to the kingship of Jesus Christ is by having a business that produces high-quality versions of what we need. You know, I think when we talked to William Kavanaugh on the show a couple months ago, he talked about, and this kind of took me aback, that the problem in our context sometimes isn't being too attached to material things. And as Christians, we think, like, I don't want to be too attached to the world, but it's a sort of detachment where it's like, I have this today, and a month later, it no longer enthralls me, so I need the next thing.
Yeah, I mean, I just think about, you know, the fact that we make, I mean, cell phones are an easy target, but, you know, they're making money hand over fist. I'm not going to feel bad, you know, dogging on them a bit. But they make them to become obsolete. Yeah. There is no phone where they're like, hey, this phone will easily be upgradable. We hope that this is the phone you have for a decade. You know, we hope when you look back and have pictures, right, of your old age, it's like, there's the phone when I first got it back in 2008, and now here it is in 2035, and you still got the same phone, right? Like, no one thinks that. They don't think that about cars. People don't even think that about houses anymore, which is crazy. Because the house ain't moving, folks. It's in one place, you know. But, like, we've got to that. And it's like you said, you know, it starts becoming, you know, horse before the cart, chicken before the egg, these big questions of, you know, do you have to produce desire because it's so easy to produce anything? Or, like, is the causation inverse? But you're right. Like, part of owning a business now, and I don't think this is, I've participated this with the college that I work for. I think everybody who has a ministry comes up against this. You have to let people know why they should want what you're doing. And that's just a reality in 2018. It's been a reality for a while. You look in the past, and usually you don't have to do that as much because people just need to eat. People need, you know, this, that, or the other. How do you navigate that faithfully? And I think that if there's anything Labor Day should make us think about is whatever navigating that faithfully looks like, the one people that we need to keep in mind is the dignity of the laborers who are swimming this ocean in real time. And if you have a job where you don't worry about having your job tomorrow because of what may come with technology and something like that, you should feel blessed and thankful and pray prayers of thanksgiving. But it seems to me if we're going to have a humane economy, we have to think about humans are not just cogs in a great factory. They're people, and part of their humanity rests on how we understand and appreciate the labor they do.
Well, when you talk about cell phones, I'm going to sound like an old man shouting, "Get off my lawn." Like, I was amazed that with, like, the new iPhones, you can't use the earbuds for the old one. I was like you're saying, it was almost designed where, like, oh, I need a new one and some new earbuds to go along with it. But I had a friend recently point out to me, he rewatched It's a Wonderful Life. He said one thing that struck him from the show is that the character lives in his house that his parents built.
Right?
And so all these, like, when we come back after the break, like, this broaches so many questions about localism, about fostering the kind of relationships that that allow people to have the freedom to live in a more humane way, navigating all these choppy waters.
Yeah, and again, we're getting ready to go to commercial, and immediately people go like, "Oh, well, you guys just got mad about manufacturer desire." No, listen very clearly. We are going to commercial, and these people who are advertising have to. There's not a way around it in 2018. The question is, if we believe Christ is King and influences all that we do, is there a way we do it different from everyone else? This and more when we get back with the Uncommon Good. Stick around. We'll be back after these messages. Well, Bud, if you want to comment and tell us stuff, maybe more than just that the Eagle volume is correct, Maybe if you make things and you want to take a picture, if you've seen a celebrity working in a grocery store, any of those things, you can post all of this on social media. At Facebook, we're Iowa Catholic Radio. Just search Iowa Catholic Radio. You can find us on Facebook and like us and follow what all we're up to. Or you can find our Twitter handle at IA Catholic Radio. Maybe you can see some of these memes Bud and I keep pointing out like we're 22 years old. Or if you want, you can get the old-fashioned email. I love that email's old-fashioned now, Bud. But, the old-fashioned email comes twice every week. Keeps you up to date on things that were that are coming up in the diocese and elsewhere. But like we said, we want to hear from you. We want you to stay connected, and these are the ways you can do it. And this is The Uncommon Good. We'll be back after these messages.
Everyone lives their life 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. How we use that time directly affects if our life will leave a significant impact or not. Every year, Blessman International leads teams of Central Iowans on 12-day, all-inclusive experiences filled with life-changing personal interaction with the beautiful African children that we serve. Teams are forming now for 2019. Space is limited, so make a decision today to use your time to do something significant in the life of an African child. Learn more and apply for a trip today at www.blessmaninternational.org.
Hi, this is Chad Harris with Fidelity Bank, proud graduate of Dowling Catholic High School. I'm honored to support Dowling Catholic football. I offer a friendly, trusted alternative to big financial institutions, redefining the mortgage experience for our customers and partners. Residential, investment, or commercial real estate financing, the Chad Harris team is here to assist. 515-419-2911 or online at chadharrismortgage.com. Go Maroons! Fidelity Bank is a member of the FDIC and an equal housing lender, NMLS 527988, Chad Harris, NMLS 501594.
Support for The Uncommon Good is provided by Cartridge World. Cartridge World is an industry leader delivering high-performance printing products that help you save time, money, and print great.
Perfect for businesses, home offices, college students, or busy moms trying to find affordable printing supplies including ink, toner, paper, or printers. For business customers, pickup and delivery are available. Products are guaranteed or full replacement.
Cartridge World, your low-cost, environmentally friendly printing experts, 801 73rd Street in Windsor Heights, 515-564-7400, and online at cartridgeworld.com.
St. Anthony's Knights of Columbus invites you to their 2018 golf outing September 14th at Blank Golf Course in Des Moines. Registration begins at 7 a.m. with a shotgun start at 8. The fee is $75 per golfer and sponsorship opportunities are available. 100% of the proceeds benefit the parish and school. The afternoon includes mini golf at the Blank facility and bingo at the St. Anthony Parish Hall. For more information, go to stanthonydsm.org.
Back with The Uncommon Good, Bo Bonner and Dr. Bud Marr. People might get the mistake that on today's show we're just talking about former Cosby actors, but that is not true. What we're talking about is labor, because it was Labor Day. What does the idea and the role of work play in the Catholic understanding of our life here on earth? And, I think one thing we have to say at the outset is that it's been clear in this show, hopefully, and hopefully we've helped people, think about this, is that there is no aspect of our life that, so to speak, is hidden from God or doesn't have some implication about our relationship with Jesus Christ, whether he's truly the king of our lives, in our families and society and everything. And so when we talk about economics, when we talk about the work we do, it is obviously going to be the case that we'll think about what is it that the Lord wants us to do with our time here on earth when we do have to work, and this is the common lot of all the children of Adam. How do we make that work blessed? How do we, in a sort of priestly way, even offer it up to the Lord? And I think that you start to think in that key, it's going to start to look different, hopefully, about why we think we do what we do. There is no part of our life that's just separate. And so when we talk about the fact that God has made us laborers, that he chose a foster father on earth in St. Joseph, who himself was a carpenter who did manual labor, what are the implications for that, not only in what we choose to do, but how we appreciate other people? And I think that that's at the center of everything we're talking today, Bud.
Well, yeah, Bo, and one thing I really, appreciate about Catholic teaching is that so often how human beings address particular problems can lean in one direction and become really lopsided. in preparation for today's show, I was getting into some of the encyclicals that popes have written about labor and about these topics in general. And, like Pope Leo XIII in Rerum Novarum, late 19th century, it's great because he starts with the idea of social harmony. So often when we think about economics, you could pit one group against each other. But he said if we're going to live in harmony in a just society for the common good, what does that look like? And so Leo XIII has some strong admonitions for employers, but he also speaks about the rights and the duties of employees. And I don't know about you, but as someone who's worked in different contexts, like more of us could use to hear those challenges as well, that, I'm supposed to show up to my job on time, and fulfill the duties there to the best of my capacities.
Well, I think that what starts to be interesting and why it maybe struck a nerve, I don't know, with all sorts of people, but with you and I particularly. People started going, this guy who used to be an actor, Jeffrey Owens, look how high he went. He had a wonderful job in acting, and now he's a, quote, lowly service worker at the grocery store. And fine, like, people can, like, shoot for the stars, and we can even say, actually, like, oh, too bad this person ended up doing something they didn't want to. There's no idea here that we're saying, like, no matter what you do, you're doing the right thing. You obviously can be doing the wrong thing. And there's obviously jobs you shouldn't do. This is not the uncommon good endorsing, like, drug dealing, for instance, or anything like that. But I think what strikes a chord, right, is, I don't know, so your dad, welder, right? What all did he do?
Yeah, he worked in sheet metal. Welder's kind of the shorthand term, but really any sort of like the HVAC equipment or other kind of, steel products that go into building a building.
Yeah, and then my dad has worked in natural gas industry his entire life, and not like the Hank Hill part of it where he's selling propane, like fractionators, like maintenance. I always tell people he very politely makes sure things don't blow up. And, I think both you and I can both tell stories about the stress that put on, not only their souls, but on their bodies, that, like, they've worked hard, that you look at you and me and we look like a bunch of, weenies that have never worked a day in our life compared to our dads. I think sometimes when people hear that, like, oh, you're in the intellectual business or you're in the academy, you must come from a long line of bookish nerds, and actually most of my family, and I think you'd say the same, have been laborers. So when people start talking trash about laborers or acting like there's these big, obvious good jobs, and then there's this whole heap of, like, jobs you would never want, quote unquote, it starts to strike a nerve, and that nerve is to say, like you said, that our society isn't like an organism that belongs together. It seems to me like someone is bashing, like, their kidney because it's not their heart. And if you start saying that, like, if you can imagine someone is in this sort of silly analogy, if someone's like, oh yeah, my kidney, what a bunch of loser cells, they couldn't rise to the top and be heart cells, you want to be like, man, you know what, try to live a day without your kidney. And I just feel like that's what people are doing. You can say what you want to, or you can like the job you have, or you can say something's not for you, but to trash an entire part of the working labor force because, what you associate with this or that, try to get by without having laborers in grocery and food delivery. That's all I want to say, right? Is like, try to see where you would be in a month.
Yeah, and I am grateful for, like, my family location in the sense that I think, observing my dad and how hard he worked and all that's been involved with that, it's given me a different perspective on things, or it's at least challenged me to step back and not think too knee-jerk about some topics. So to get potentially kind of controversial, Bo, I know I'm not a very controversial person, but you think about something like labor unions. And in the 21st century, I know from conversations with, like, I'll just say religious conservatives of different stripes, that unions are per se bad. Like, there's this idea that if you're in a union, you vote for a certain party. Or even, like, people have sometimes, like, the horror stories involved with, like, well, that union didn't really help the cause. It, like, I won't like, get into anything specific. But, I think knowing my dad and then reading the encyclicals alongside what I observed there, like, we do want to say that there should be a place for laborers to organize, because in some cases that's the only way that they can raise, resistance to an injustice, or just, maybe not so harsh of a term, but a problem within the company. And so, like, when we think about something like unions, for myself, Bo, do you think this is fair to say? I don't want to, like, rule it, out of court just because there may be particular problems with specific unions in our day and age.
Well, I mean, I think there's multiple things that go on. On one hand, you can't deny, I'm sorry, this is like, you want to have a fight on Zip Whip Line, go ahead. But you can't deny that unions got people things like child labor laws, 2-day weekends, 8-hour work days. You can go through the history of like how difficult it is, and these things half the time were not nicely contested things, right? Like, just look at the Ludlow massacres, the Pullman strikes, right? This is just all American history and the difficulty, right, it took to get some protections that, like, we now in 2018 not only assume, but if we would look back and see how bad certain things were, we would be aghast, and properly so. It's also impossible to look back at the history of labor in the United States and not realize how much certain unions sold their workers up the creek. That's absolutely true as well. I think about my life as an Okie. That is the sort of memory everyone nascently has, is labor union fiascos and corruption and everything like this. Much like any other human institution, I don't think it's like uniquely their problem. But if you go back further in history, right, what Leo XIII has in mind, right, is the medieval guild system, where precisely what happened is people in skilled labor, and in other labor as well, but particularly skilled labor, they joined together in order to try to not only better their own lot, but actually to better what they did, to get better at what they're doing. And, that starts to be another thing as well. On one hand, it's true that, like, we primarily think of unions in terms of, like, negotiation of labor contracts, but when the unions are at their best, it's also a self-governing thing. I have a buddy who lives in Wisconsin, and he says Wisconsin has some of the best electricians, he thinks, on the planet, but at least in the United States, and that's because the electrical union in Wisconsin is really serious about making sure all of their electricians are good, and they have to pass all these tests and everything like that. Again, I know everybody probably has some sort of like idea about a failed Wisconsin electrician, but he goes like, he has to work with them, and he goes, at its best, that's what they're trying to do, right, is improve their own field. I would extend that to say, because we were talking about our dads earlier. I don't know about your mom, but my mom mostly stayed at home, but then she also ended up working in the food service industry, and that starts to be something else as well. If we think that, like, those jobs are worthless, you'll hear people talk about unionizing those jobs, and they'll be like, oh, but those are just, entry-level jobs, blah, blah, blah. And, whether they end up being unionized or not, this goes back to your question of, it's silly to act like there's some jobs that, as long as they're legitimate, are worthless. And that's the thing, right? The only worthless job is a job that is sinful and leads other people to sin. That's the only job that you should have no pride in, right? Is if you are a drug dealer, a pimp, things like this. Sure, yes, have no pride in those, run far away. But if you're doing a job that is legitimate and licit, you should be proud of what you're doing. Now, maybe particularly you shouldn't, because you have some sort of skill, and you're just, blah, blah, blah. But no, there's no job that we should look at and go, it is beneath the dignity of the laborer that Jesus Christ himself blessed by having a father who was a foster father as a laborer when he was incarnate on earth.
Well, Bo, and sometimes when we're talking about these things, it maybe sounds really abstract and out there, but I don't know. I think for a lot of listeners, there's got to be elements of their life, especially their work life, that come into play. I mean, not to pick on any one group, but I'm going to pick on someone. I graduated from St. Louis University. It's my alma mater. I love her. But, like, you look at realities there, and I recently read a piece that the president of the university is being compensated an inordinate amount, right, close to $500,000, and they presently employ adjunct instructors at, $3,000 or $4,000 a course. And so there, as a Catholic institution, you have a concrete sort of reality in front of you where we say, is this just? We don't have to be communist or capitalist or whatever, but how do we approach this specific instance in a just manner? And again, whenever I bring this up, I realize the complexities involved because I've worked in the theology department, and I know sometimes, like the chair of the theology department, he knows I have this much money in my budget to cover the courses that the university has asked us to teach. And so, like, adjunct instructors for him sometimes are just like a lifeline. Like, this is the only way I'm going to cover, like, we're going to teach all the students that have been sent our direction. But I still want to say, like, as Catholics, that should cause us some disquietude, right?
Oh, I got you talk about picking on people. The easiest one, I think, is stop giving PhDs if there's not enough jobs for them. If that makes me like some sort of horrible radical, then there you go. I signed it. You don't make people go into debt with federal money for a job that they can't possibly get. Now, here's the deal. People love saying that stuff, but then that's saying no to a lot of people's dreams. Like, are we ready to do that? Or you think about adjunct, right? And I currently adjunct, right? I do not have a PhD. I've mostly done adjunct work through my life. If we're going to wrestle with the adjunct problem, one of the answers might be no more adjuncts ever, right? That might be what people come to the conclusion to, which means people like me wouldn't get to teach. I don't think that's what they would come to, but you know what I'm saying, right? Is like the problem with all of this is, it's great to want to change things, but you have to be vulnerable enough to say it might change in ways that I've not predicted. And are we going to be willing to be self-sacrificial to say what is truly best for the common good, which in the end will be good for me but might not immediately appear to be so. And sometimes I think we all just go along to get along, and we're going to be that way until we ourselves or someone we know stops getting along. And I don't mean that we need to be proactive. I mean, like, in many ways, life really is like you got to take one step at a time and deal with what's in front of you. But it all comes down to, like, I think maybe we'll see opportunities to start talking about this if we stop assuming that there's entire swaths, or maybe even more than half the jobs on earth that are, so to speak, below my dignity. And that starts to be, I think, what we keep pressing on with Labor Day in this story is, do you really think the person who is helping you at the grocery store, that they're doing something beneath your dignity? And that to me is something I think if people are honest, a lot of them would say yes. And then with the admission of what Jesus Christ himself lived, ask, why do we think that?
Well, Bo, and this ties back to, like, a half hour ago, you were like lauding grocery stores and how much you love them, and Trader Joe's being kind of like the cream of the crop in a way. But some of this, like, the questions that we ask can be, how do we transform the realities that are already in front of us? So I think about something like grocery stores and, like, how impersonal the process can be sometimes. Like, I'm guilty of this. It's like 7 p.m. on a Thursday night and the cupboard's bare, and you're trying to come up with, like, the kids are screaming or whatever, and you just want to, like, run to Hy-Vee and get through as quickly as possible.
Right.
And I'm going to even use the self-serve checkout if I can. But, like, this, again, I don't want to give the impression that this is about nostalgia, but you watch sometimes, like, old movies.
Right.
And the relationship that sometimes citizens would have with their butcher,
Yes.
And that was a way that I think, like, buying food was more humane, where, like, I know the person who perhaps raised the cattle that I'm going to eat, but certainly the person who prepares it, and he has a stake because he knows he's going to...
Nice pun, by the way.
Oh,
the
man.
butcher has a stake. Bam!
For all
I knew this show was worth it, yeah.
Like, he knows the same customers are going to be coming back. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yes.
there's like a tighter... You threw me off.
Sorry.
There's, like, this interweb of relationships.
I know that, like, I should be an adult and go, like, let Bud finish his point, but when you say the butcher has a stake in something, I have to stop the show and notice that.
People are going to grill me on that one.
Yeah, they're going to grill you. Bam. Just keeps going.
I try to season the show with, like,
oh! Can we do this for, like, 4 more minutes till the close of the show?
No, but Bo, and in all seriousness, this reaches back to, like, the third show that we did was about subsidiarity.
Yeah.
And this is like a higher order group shouldn't intervene if something can be tackled at the local level. But that cuts both ways. Like, if there needs to be a higher order intervention, Catholic teaching calls for that. The problem is so many of the relationships that we have, again, are characterized by competitiveness and mutual suspicion,
Right.
rather than the solidarity and the preferential option for the poor that Catholic social teaching calls for.
Well, what I think's amazing, actually, you were talking about Hy-Vee. If I'm not mistaken, Hy-Vees don't have self-checkout.
Nice.
And then I know Fairways don't. And I know that, like, they're not sponsoring our shows, so I shouldn't probably, like, laud them until they, like, send the money in.
Pony up.
Yeah, pony up. But that, I'll just be honest, like, one of the reasons I love about Fairway is, like, they really do try to make it like, you should go talk to the butcher in the back. And,
yep.
I mean...
and butchers love that.
Yeah, butchers are... and you can ask any student I have, especially when I have recourse to teach high school students, I'm always telling them that they should go be butchers. I'm like, look, I know your parents want you to go to college, but you could be a butcher, which is really awesome. And get good at it, right? Because everybody hates a bad cut of meat. I mean, me personally anyway. So, yes, butchers are easy to point out. I guess if you're a vegetarian, I don't know, the person who slices up your quinoa or whatever. But the idea, right, is that when you start thinking about the personal relationships are involved, it doesn't heal everything. And that's something I want to say, too. Yeah. We're not acting like if you strike up a personal rapport with, your local grocery store worker, all things will be healed. There is lots going on. These are very complicated. The ties that bind all of this together are very thick. And like we said, they intervene in our life so much that here at Catholic Radio, we have to advertise, and we're not really selling anything. We just want to be heard. It's really tied up thick in every part of our life in 2018, but it won't change at all unless we take those steps. And I think it's just to keep, coming back to what started this entire conversation. If you can't look at an actor deciding to work on the side at a grocery store without thinking like, oh, wow, they're bottoming out, as if they've like OD'd or like got in trouble with the law, if that's your first thought, man, we have no chance at actually taking steps forward. And so I think that's why it's important to take a deep breath, take a step back and ask, if we believe that Jesus Christ is the King of our society, how would he react to this?
Well, and when we think about like the New Testament idea of principalities and powers, sometimes our vision is burdened by like forces in the world that just aren't positive, and so part of it is like renewing our minds and expanding our social imaginary. I know, Bo, last year when we talked about establishing men's groups in Des Moines,
right?
Like one conversation that we had is like, don't always default to a Bible study,
right?
Like a men's group who builds decks for elderly folks who need something like that at their house. That is a contribution to the kingdom.
No, and I think that's what we have to call for and ask is, are we willing like you said, renew our vision? And so I want to say, it's a little late, but happy Labor Day, especially to all of those people who labor in jobs with their hands, that use the strength of their bodies, that in our day and age might not get the respect that they do, but with the heart of Jesus Christ, I want to say thank you for all that you do for our families, and that if you haven't heard something like that, it's a long time coming. But especially people in the service industry, you are a servant like our King Jesus Christ is, and we appreciate what you do, and I hope that there's legitimate, concrete things we can do to make your life better in the near future.
And if any butchers want to give us a discount for lauding their field, Bo and I are both open to that.
That's right. There's a lot at stake. Bam! Okay. I think we got to get off the air before the FCC closes us down on that one.
Okay.
This is the Uncommon Good. May Jesus Christ, the Prince of Peace, reign in our hearts and our families, our city, our state, our nation, the world, the galaxy, everything. This is the Uncommon Good. We'll be back next week. But I think the obvious big thing coming up is Christ Our Life Conference. That's September 29th through 30th. It's not quite a rescheduled Nebraska-Iowa State game, but, you're not doing anything on the 29th and 30th. You should come on over.
No, that sounds amazing. I always liked when that rolled around there in Des Moines.
I always appreciate that they're like, you know what, we're going to, go every other year so that, the anticipation can grow. Can you imagine... if they only did the fair every other year, my wife and kids would be going absolutely bonkers by the next time the fair rolled around.
Yeah, we really shouldn't skip things like Christmas, the fair, or Christ Our Life conference.
Yeah, that's right. So that's coming up September 29th and 30th. And like we've said, there's all sorts of ways to go and keep up with what's going on. IowaCatholicRadio.com. We have our Facebook, Iowa Catholic Radio, Twitter handle at IA Catholic Radio.
Yeah.
The Zip Whip line, 515-223-1150. We also have the email twice a month that you can keep up with us. But what are other ways that they can participate in the ministries of Iowa Catholic
Well, before
Radio?
that, real quick, I would encourage people to sign up for the email. We mentioned these events. There's a save the date section, so we don't pester you with emails, but each month when you open it up, you'll be able to see, like, oh, these are the big Catholic events coming up in front of me. But do think about starting your day with us. 5 a.m., you can plug right into the Bible in a year, move into praying the Rosary. Father Andrew Winchell, great priest, provides reflections on the Gospels 2 times throughout the day, early in the morning, then later at 9:30.
And like we said, Iowa Catholic Radio, it's not just a matter of a sort of commercial, sort of taste you have, like I like Ford over Chevy, I like Iowa Catholic Radio over somewhere else on the dial. No, this is a ministry that you share in. Bud and I and people like us, we're just the audio part that you hear, thankfully not see, but hear. But really the engine that makes all of this go is your donations, and this is a way for Jesus Christ to reach people 24/7 and through walls and across Iowa, Oklahoma, and all the places we play. This is The Uncommon Good. God bless you, Bud. Thanks for everything. Have a good week, and we will talk to you next Wednesday.
The Uncommon Good with Bo Bonner and Dr. Bud Marr is heard every week on wonderful Catholic stations like this one, and anytime on podcast. Just search for The Uncommon Good.